Welcome to 39-minute conversations. Please wait for your host to begin this meeting. Your meeting is now being recorded.
All right. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. One sec. Okay.
Okay.
Adjust some things here.
Yeah, do your thing.
Zoom. This looks different. Okay. Is it already recording? Are we on the clock?
Oh, we're on the clock. It starts as soon as you're in, baby.
Oh God. Okay. All right. I just don't know what to do. I feel so pressed for time.
Well, okay. You're definitely pressed for time. And in fact, I'm going to make it a little bit worse by starting with an ad read that I'm going to make you sit through. I hope that's okay.
Sweet. You don't do editing either, right? So I shouldn't interrupt you like I am right now?
I mean, you can if you want to. It's your time. It's your time too. This episode of 39-Minute Conversations is not officially presented by Peacock. Yes, I have advertised for Peacock before, but damn it, I'm going to do it again. If you want to call me a Peacock simp, go for it. But right now, they have two of the best new shows I've seen in a while, and I want to use this immense platform to shill for them. First, there's Poker Face, a delightful mystery show from Ryan Johnson and starring Natasha Lyonne as Charlie Cale, a human lie detector who keeps getting wrapped up in murder cases. And speaking of murderers, talk about a murderer's row of stars. Adrian Brody, Benjamin Bratt, Dasha Polanco, Judith Light, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Lil Rel Howery, Hong Chow, Ron Perlman, Nick Nolte, Tim Meadows, Stephanie Hsu, and so many more. And then there's Paul T. Goldman, a show that's actually really hard to describe, but had me totally hooked. I binged the whole thing in a night, which is something I haven't done in a while. It's basically a comedy documentary from director Jason Wallner and producer Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg about a man who's convinced his ex-wife is leading a criminal double life and the filmmaker helping him tell his story while uncovering the truth about what really happened. If you like Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal, you're going to love Paul T. Goldman. That's Poker Face and Paul T. Goldman, both streaming now on Peacock. And now the intro. Hello, I'm Brian T. Arnold, and this is 39-Minute Conversations, a podcast about reconnecting with old friends and making new ones, but I've only got 39 minutes to do it because I will not be paying for Zoom Pro. My guest today is a senior executive and partner at Pipeline Media Group. He oversees script pipeline, book pipeline, film pipeline, as well as pipeline artists. He and his organization have been instrumental in helping launch the careers of many screenwriters, including Evan Daugherty, Tripper Clancy, Crosby Salander, and me, Brian T. Arnold. He's also the co-host of the podcast, How the Arts Were Won. Please welcome Matt Joseph Misetich.
This is the most stressful podcast I've ever been on in my life.
Good.
No, hey, it's great to be here, buddy.
It is great to have you. Thank you for being here. We know each other a little bit, and I think we'll get sure. more into how we met and how we got to know each other as the interview goes on. But we've only met in person once at this writer's mixer at a bar I was very nervous to be at because given my current shut in, scared of everything tendencies. And we didn't know each other prior to the pandemic. So I just want to start where I start with most of my guests. How have the last 3 years been for you? What did you learn about yourself? How did this time change you, if it has?
The last 3 years has been busy. And I have changed as a person, not at all. And now I'm here. It's wonderful to be here.
Perfect.
I learned nothing. Everyone says they well, you know what, the pandemic has taught me this, the pandemic has taught me that, and the value of life. It's like I already knew all that. So I learned that a lot of people are really stupid about, science and whatnot. If that
Fair
counts.
enough. Yeah, that definitely counts. I definitely lost a little bit of faith in a lot of aspects of humanity. That's part of how I was changed. I did my research on you. I wrote up a lot of questions, but I also know that you host a podcast yourself. When we talked via email before this, you mentioned some questions that you wanted to get into. So I almost feel like I'm going to be interviewed today as much as I interview you.
Yes.
Which I am excited. So I'm excited for this chat and to see where it goes.
Well, our podcast that I co-host with Michelle Daniel, who's lovely. That's her full name, Michelle Daniel, who's lovely.
Great name.
I have to include that. We've only been doing it since May of last year, which I think is probably older than this one.
It is, yeah.
As a matter of fact, just two noobs on the pod waves. I don't know what they call them.
That's what they're called. They call them the pod waves.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you nailed it. You're hip. You're hip to the zeitgeist.
Well, I'm pretty much professional now as far as podcasts are concerned. Yes, that's true. And yes, I will try not to ask you too many questions. However, I do have one question. Let's kick off your podcast with a question from me to you.
Please, let's do it.
You mentioned that you hadn't been to a mixer in a while, and besides the one that we had last 8-9 months ago now. Was that a result of the pandemic, or was that always kind of the case?
That is mostly a result of the pandemic. I'm a little bit of an introvert historically, but I always had, and that being a writer and working from home and all those things don't help with the introverted status. But in the pre-pandemic days, I did a lot of like comedy shows and go to the bars after. I was on a lot of improv and sketch and those kinds of things. So I definitely would have been, I went to like one giant writer's mixer and, didn't think a thing about being in a room with 300 people, because why would I? And nowadays, I definitely was the only person at that mixer who like kept a mask on for most of it. And I kind of snuck out kind of early because for the most part, I don't go into crowded places anymore right now. When I hang out with people, I'm always like, it's really fun outside. Outside's my favorite place. I just got back in right before this podcast from I made someone do an outdoor lunch who wanted to catch that we caught up.
Yeah.
So I think that's who I am now. And for the foreseeable future, I don't see that changing.
Yeah.
But you guys, was that you hosted that or John hosted that?
Oh, that was
a pipeline
me,
thing.
John, and Sean first started organizing those.
And
it's outdoor.
Yeah, it was semi-outdoor. It was indoor-outdoor.
I mean, it's a giant open wall, basically.
True, but I was still nervous.
It gets so packed there that
it does. I got nervous, but I wanted to be there for you and for John, and I made myself go. But it was definitely hard for me to show up to that, but I did my best.
I appreciate the effort, and I'm curious too. Has this sort of newfound perspective, has that influenced your writing at all? Has that influenced the stories that you're telling? Has it influenced your writing pace, for that matter?
That's a good question.
I promise I'm not commandeering the hosting of this podcast.
Hey, you know what? I might switch the order of the pictures. This week might be 39-minute conversations with Matt Misetich featuring Brian T. Arnold, and that's fine. I don't know. I definitely, the last script that I really had go out there, was one of the ones that you read a while back in the end, which was already about life and death and trying to live your life during hard times. And it wasn't necessarily, I started writing it before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic gave me a new perspective on it. And I think I think that's part of why people related to it in such a way, was it felt very reflective of the times by accident. It was mostly, when I started it, a script about my own, anxiety and feeling like that I put too much of myself into work and not enough into living life and all these different things. But since I moved on from that script, I don't know if there are a ton of influences. Pace is maybe a little bit slower, but I have more time to write, but it's also just a little harder to write when you just feel unsettled, when the world feels unsettling. So it's not, I know some people who just wrote the whole pandemic, and I was paralyzed by writing from it for a while. But I'm starting to get my groove back, I think. And, all my stories have always been kind of humanistic and some degree about life and death, because I've always been a hypochondriac. I have, all these different issues in that, and it with anxiety and depression and those kind of things that are always show up in my work. So I think, if anything, who I've always been is now almost a little bit more relatable to the rest of the world. So I don't know if my writing has changed as much as the world is now like, oh, I get you now.
The world is caught up to you.
Now we're all scared, baby.
I'm not scared. I feel like I should be, which worries me. So I guess I'm scared about that.
You do. I don't know. Like you do seem much more relaxed about things than I am, which is I'm envious of, and I'm glad that you're in that place. Uh,
Pros and cons, BTA.
sure.
So can I call you BTA?
A lot of people do, so go for it. Whatever you want to do.
It's so simple. It's just 3 quick syllables.
Yeah, it feels great and it feels nice.
Yeah.
It feels unique.
And it's a unique acronym. It's not like, if your name was Paul Christopher, Perugi or something, then it's PCP, and you can't do PCP.
You can't do PCP. I mean, it makes me feel like Paul Thomas Anderson, like when like people are like, oh, BTA, PTA. And I'm like, all right.
Oh yeah.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
You're right, it's too close. I'll think of something else.
No, too late. One thing that you did during the height of the pandemic that I thought was really neat is you and the folks at Script Pipeline started having these writer mixers, like get-togethers on social media. Yes. Hashtag Pipeline Writers, hashtag Script Chat. Screenwriting is such a lonely existence most of the time, and I think you were doing mixers before the pandemic, and you just moved them to the internet. But it was such a refreshing thing while we were all already isolated people in a more isolating time, having this venue to get together and talk. And I made a lot of good friends doing that, and it was a great way to foster community. And so what inspired you to start doing that?
Well, a quick fact check, because she'll yell at me. Jeannie Bowerman actually started Script Chat many years ago.
Oh, I should get her on this podcast.
You should. She's
instead of you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk your ear off, and so will she. So good luck. You're gonna have to upgrade 93-minute podcasts. So she was Script Chat, and she's been doing that Sunday night slot for 13 years now, 12 years.
Oh wow. Maybe I just wasn't aware of it until like the pandemic made me more aware of on social media more and more aware of that. Yeah.
Well, but Pipeline Writers started in March 20th, if I'm not mistaken, because that was the year where I'm like, all right, let's start doing more quarterly or even monthly in-person mixers in Los Angeles for writers and for industry. And then that plan didn't work out because you know how that story goes. So I'm at home and I'm thinking, like, I'll just do like a Twitter mixer. And I originally was going to call it a Twixer.
Hey,
glad I abandoned that one.
Yeah, good move.
But I wanted to. This wasn't done for like branding purposes per se. I just wanted like a unique hashtag that was kind of unique to us. So I wanted to include the pipeline somehow. Some people seem to think like, oh, it was a marketing ploy. I'm like, no, I was bored, and I was like, I know I said I'm not scared because I was being very, macho about it, but that was a very scary month, right?
Yeah,
in April was very scary too. Until we kind of had a grip on things. Until
the vaccine, really, like all of 2020 was rough.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of blocked that from our memory. Anyway, I gotta do a whole other podcast on the psychological ramifications of the pandemic. But no, it's just like, it'd be cool if like every Friday night, everyone just came out, went on Twitter and they made a little drink for themselves or whatever their beverage of choice, and they hung out and just not even talked about like writing or talked about Q&A with a guest or something. We did a few of those, but like mostly just to hang out and talk to each other from around the world. So we did that. The first few weeks went really well, and a lot of people joined on, and then I just kind of lost control of it after that. The writers just took it over, which was great. Last year people went back into the milieu of society.
Sure, right? A lot of people did.
Yeah, so people went from being terminally online to not terminally online, which is good. So it just kind of, attendance kind of hampered. I kind of let go of it a bit, but now this year reformatted it a bit, so it's once a month, last Friday of every month. We'll organize a little bit more through Script Pipeline, do giveaways and things like that. It's nice to have that kind of outlet there.
Speaking of giveaways, one of the things that became very popular during that was the Script Pipeline mugs. became a phenomenon. Everybody wanted one. Everybody was entering contests to get one. I've got mine right here today. I'm
I see
very,
it.
yeah.
What's the other side of it?
Oh, it's Reckless Creative.
Oh, that's the original.
That's the original.
That's the first batch, first order.
And it's got a little chip in it now, but it's still functional.
It gives it its character.
But if you wanted to send me another one, I wouldn't complain about that.
I'm going to send you another one. I'm going to send you this one. This one from Symposium, our new platform through Pipeline Artists. It's not this exact variation. This one is too rare, even for public consumption. Sure. But I will send you one. I don't know how that blew up like it did. And it blew up in the sense that it was like blew up in our little tiny sector of the industry. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool. I mean, it didn't really it cost us a bit, but it was worth it. A lot of time and money spent on shipping. But it was kind of, I don't know, it was cool. I had so many little taglines. I'm like, gosh, this would look good somewhere, but I don't know where to put it. And I'm like, oh, how about the side of a mug?
Sure.
So like the Reckless Creatives thing was the first one. And then Jeannie and Sadie, who's the editor-in-chief of Script Mag now, their podcast is called Reckless Creatives. I let them borrow that tagline. So it just kind of spoke to not just the little taglines and stuff, but the mugs themselves, and just like having something like that sort of giveaway kind of fit well with our vibe, I guess. We're not like, avant-garde over here, but we're a little bit more grounded and honest and realistic. So it just kind of cut through the marketing garbage and
it was really nice. It was cool to see people kind of going crazy for those mugs, because I at that point I think I didn't really get into the hashtag. I wasn't as aware of it until after I entered Script Pipeline my year, which was 2021. Right. So that's kind of when I started I entered it at the end of 2020. So beginning of 2021 was when I was kind of like becoming more and more aware of this hashtag and getting more involved in it. And it was definitely something that was a great, like I said, it meant a lot to me to have that kind of community with people during a time when I felt like I didn't have one. So like, I just genuinely appreciate that was something you guys built.
Well, you won the 2020 First Look season.
I won,
Did you, I'm curious, how did you submit? Did you submit because you were taking part in the Twitter conversations? And
I don't remember. I think I just submitted through Coverfly just because at the time I was having kind of a rough go of it career-wise. I had just been dropped by my agents, actually, and I was trying to figure out what I was doing. I was feeling like, the last couple of years hadn't gone the way I anticipated. And I had a couple scripts that basically I was looking for, am I good at this? Am I, I just need maybe some notes from an outside perspective. I entered with no expectation of winning, and then I did end up winning, which was wild and extremely validating.
2 categories. I slipped that in.
Thank you for slipping that in. I wasn't going to. I did. I won 2 different categories with 2 different scripts that year, which was wild. And at that point is when I sort of became like, oh, let me get more involved with Pipeline. This is cool. And that contest really did change my life and my career. I met, after I won it, I met my new reps, and one of those scripts ended up on the blacklist, ended up getting optioned and all those things. So I owe, like I said in the intro, I owe a lot of my career to you and to Script Pipeline. It wouldn't have, I don't know if I would be where I'm at right now if it wasn't for you all.
Well, thank you. One step of your career anyway.
I mean, a big step. The first step is a big one.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I should have been the sponsor of this. We should have been the sponsor of this podcast. I don't know how much detail you're comfortable going into as far as that whole finding a new rep process, but I'll be vague. Because you came to me and said, hey, here's where I'm at. I don't really know where to go. And I'm like, well, look, let me read the script, and then we can kind of, just take it step by step. And, you had told me that this script in the end or now the end, right?
In originally the end, now in the end.
Oh, I thought it was reversed. Okay, well, whatever. I should know these things. I thought it was pretty great, but I did kind of have that little nugget of doubt in my head, like, well, how are other industry people going to respond? When you told me you left your other manager, I'm like, all right, well, let me send it here, here, and here, and we'll see what's what. I didn't really have much of a relationship with John at Bellevue at that point. They were just kind of a industry person that we sort of sent stuff to, right? They weren't really my typical go-to. So I wasn't really sure of his taste.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that 2021 was really when I started working closer with them, and then obviously now and in 2022. But no, so I wasn't sure of his proclivities in terms of like writing style and what kind of client. But he liked it. And I quickly realized that John Zalzerny has good taste. I think he's going to want to
that he does.
Shout out.
I like to think so.
Not always. I disagree with him often, but for the most part, I think he has really good taste in writers and scripts. And what I like about him and certain other managers is they have a very open mind on what has a chance in the market. It's not like, oh, don't give me a drama, don't give me this period piece, don't give me this, this maybe slightly lower concept thing. Not that yours is lower concept, but just in general.
Right.
Yours is actually fairly high concept.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty high concept.
Yeah. But when you go into it with that mentality, I just think that's the proper move. Everyone kind of has their own sweet spot, but
Sure.
So I appreciated that, and I'm glad it worked out. And here we are.
It definitely worked out. And I will say, like, yeah, John basically, I think he had a little bit of the same, not reservations, but same thoughts on the script that you had, where like he and I had a very honest chat after I signed with him, or around the time I was signing with him, and he was like, look, this script is weird. The script is dark. The script has a lot that might, this might not sell. But he was willing to, which is something I'd been looking for my whole career up to that point. He was willing to say, but we're going to send it everywhere. We think it's good writing. Maybe somebody will buy it. Maybe they won't. It is weird. But
I like that. I like that bravado.
Me too. Because I had been, with my previous reps, I had been in situations where there were like, I'm not going to name them. I don't want to disparage anybody. And they're very good at what they do. But they had, their tendency was to be like, well, let's send it to like these 3 companies and see what they think. And let's send it to maybe like 2 more and see what they would feel it out. And like, if like 4 or 5 companies were into it, they'd be like, well, okay, maybe the next script is kind of how it would go. And I think that happens a lot. But one thing I appreciated about John and Kate at Bellevue, and then my agents at APA, shout out Cheryl, Adam, and Haley. They were just like, screw it. We like, this is a weird ass script. Let's go. Let's send it to everybody and let's see what happens. And I think that's something that a lot of writers don't get at a lot of places. And it's not maybe the strategy for every script, but just that one calling card intro to the town kind of script. It ended up getting optioned. It actually had a few companies who were interested in optioning it, not to sound braggy or anything, but it was just the kind of thing of, they took a chance on it and it worked out, and you guys took a chance, like putting your name on it and saying, this is a winner, you should look at this. So I think
that's, not to cut you off, I think that's key too, because we're in a similar situation as like when managers go out to producers and elsewhere with a script. There's like 3 levels of good scripts that I would kind of categorize. Like there's the scripts that I'm like, all right, this is good enough. It could go out. The writer's not really there's no really way to improve it. There's the script that's like a notch above that, where it's like, oh, it has a little bit of a twist to it. And then there's the script where I'm like, I have to send this to everybody immediately as soon as possible. And that's not to say that, that top script is the one that's going to get made or sold or get the writer opportunities. Any one of those 3 scripts can, right? But for that 3rd tier script, that's like, it's good, the writing is good, but we're not like super crazy about it. That's the script where I may send it to like 4 or 5 managers or production companies, and they all pass and they all have kind of middling feedback, right? And I might say, well, maybe I won't go wider with it necessarily. Usually I will, to be honest, because we're in a different position and it's just, but if it's a script where I'm like, all right, our reputation is on the line too. So I don't want to send a script to like some of our other partners, let's say, who I don't have a closer relationship with, unless I'm like really sure that it's going to land well. And it ends up being a sort of a small handful of that little kind of elite tier, so to speak. But what I've learned is, even for those, I don't call them bottom tier scripts because they're still great scripts, right? But like, like the lower part of like our top 10 finalists, for example, any one of those scripts could get made and could gel with somebody, and you just never know. So you have to cover your bases. I've seen it happen many times with finalists of ours, even semi-finalists of ours that we didn't really that we might have helped develop or we might not have. I'll see their script later on, like on deadline, and it's someone's attached to it, and it's it's going to be maybe a straight to streaming type film or something, but it got made, right? And I don't look at that as scripts we missed necessarily. It's just everyone kind of has their own taste, but sending stuff out as wide as you're comfortable with, I think, is always the good plan.
I think so. And I'm not going to ask questions about this because I know this is a topic that you hear too much and discuss too much. But some people on the internet might say like, oh, contests aren't good, contests aren't helpful, don't.
Right.
And I can attest that that's not the case. I am proof that a career can come out of them. So I want to skip over that question because I think it's pretty clear where we both stand that contests can't. But go ahead.
I mean, I can just touch base. I don't think that I don't think those opinions are bad necessarily. I do think it's kind of a misguided opinion to say like, oh, they don't do anything, because obviously they do, right? They do things for the people who place in them anyway, right?
Yeah.
But it depends on the contest, it depends on the fellowship, it depends on what program you're in. I've seen people that went through the bigger studio programs that really didn't get much out of it, surprisingly.
Sure.
Whereas someone who like placed in script pipeline sold their spec, so you really never know. I'm a big proponent of, you have to kind of cover all your ground with that one script. And if that one script doesn't, if you hit dead ends, then that's it. You try another inroad, or you try again those same sources with another script in the future. Right. So yeah, that's my side note.
I think that's great. And I think it's true, because the one thing that I kind of return to on this podcast, the more, writers that I have, the more you realize different people have different stories of how they broke in, some contests, some, the studio programs, some made a feature or short, it's everybody. Like I repeat this too much on this podcast, but it's just the fact that there is no one door. There's 100 doors, and you just have to find your door. I would love to talk about sort of beyond the contest, or including the contest. What does Pipeline focus on in terms of like how they work with writers? In terms, obviously you all get the script out, but you also mentioned development. You also mentioned just staying in touch and reaching out to people. So what is like your, I guess, pitch for what Pipeline does for people who do well in the contests and beyond?
Yeah, it used to be, I used to kind of push the whole like, yeah, we're going to send your script to multiple industry people over the long term, and we still do that, obviously. But over the last few years, I've been leaning a lot harder into like the development side of things. So reviewing new pitches or new scripts from our former finalists or winners. And seeing who we might have as far as reps and production companies. The reason for that is, once we send out a script, it's out of our hands. Either someone likes it or they don't like it. And it's almost as frustrating for us as it is for the writer when we get a pass on a script that we really like. And I don't know. I don't want to define the success of the company based on like our success stories per se, like how many writers we get repped, or because I just don't, it's almost random at this point. It's not random, but it feels like it sometimes. But what we can do is we have a team in place. It's a very good team, development execs, freelance readers who although some of them are practically full-time at this point.
Sure.
I just sent, she's going to yell at me tomorrow if she sees them. I sent like 17 scripts to one of our development execs. Hi, Bree. But my queue, not to go off on a tangent
Please.
but like my queue just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I'm like, I used to think, gosh, that person I sent the script to hasn't read it in like 2-3 weeks. And I'm looking at scripts that people sent me in November still. So the time passes. But no, I want to skew more into development because it's something we can control. It's something that, you know, we can, not only can control, but it's a constant that we can do for the next, you know, 100 years if we need to. Not that long, hopefully. But even with writers like you who are repped, like always an open invite to send me like, hey, what do you think of this idea before I sent it to John and Zach, or John and Kate.
John and Kate,
who's technically okay. You know, stuff like that, just having that ongoing relationship. Because it makes sense. If you're going to say this writer is better than these other several thousand writers, why wouldn't you maintain some sort of a relationship with them, you know, as far as reviewing the material and helping them along? And when they become big, they can come on my podcast or one of the Pipeline Artist podcasts. So,
you estimate that you've read, I'm trying to find my note here, I can't find it, like 30,000 scripts, pitches, pilots, all those kind of things. So like
books,
all that. So what do you look for in a good piece of writing? If somebody's entering a contest or submitting to you guys for development, what are you looking for?
You know, people debate this on Twitter all the time too. I think
people debate everything on Twitter.
What am I saying? Like, here's a topic no one debated. Like, that's never been said. No, it's like the whole like just be, or just what is it? Don't be boring, right? Which I have argued it's correct. It's not really advice. I don't know how that's actionable advice per se. Speaking of your lovely manager John, he would disagree with me because he's already disagreed with me on that point. But it is true, and it's, for me, it's my own subjective thing. Like when I'm reading a script, I want to be like that first scene, that first page, really the first few pages, just like do something a little bit different and do something really bold and audacious. I don't care what genre it is. It could be yours was I want to say slow moving, but it's not. There's no explosions or anything, right? There's no like fantasy sequences, but it pulled me in. Well, I think, but it pulled me in right away, you know? Partly because of the writing, partly because of just all those little things that could be a whole other podcast entirely, on all those little intangibles, like not just the writing style, but like the backdrop and like how things are structured and how you enter a scene. If the first scene is like a guy and he's walking into a coffee place and he's making a coffee order and he sits down and he's waiting for someone to arrive, like that's not a fun way to enter a movie, right?
Sure.
You see a million movies that start just like that though. But in script form, that has to feel exciting somehow, you know? So that's really what I look for in most scripts, is just to have that, like the writer had fun with it. You can see that on the page.
Yeah, I tend to think that you can tell when somebody's just writing for like, I think this is an idea that'll sell, or you know,
all the time.
You have to be able, like, if you don't love what you're doing, it's not like, other people won't love it either. Like I think you have to write what's kind of, not to sound too woo-woo or whatever, but like you have to write what's in your heart. You have to write like the movie you want to see. And if that's not what's coming out of you, nobody else is gonna, you know, that's not gonna be what's somebody's picking up. And I think that's so important.
I will add this too. I think it might be a little hyperbolic, but I'm pretty sure every great script that I've read, like that top, 0.01% of scripts that have gone on, gotten, attention, gone on the blacklist or what have you, they all came from a personal place. Either it was a topic that the writer was really, really familiar with personally, or the theme was very personal to them, or I don't know, it was just, they were driven by a story that they, like you said, that they wanted to tell. They weren't really writing to the market. They were writing for themselves with the market in mind. if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
You tell people, if you get the advice of you have to write to the market, you do. But like you said, I think you get this, you get blinders on you, and you're just focused on like, I have to write this, therefore I have to change my my personal intent or my personal preference.
Yeah,
and that's when things go haywire.
I would mostly agree with that. I do think there's a little bit of I think keeping not necessarily keeping the current market in mind as much as just knowing what's marketable and what generally what's get made.
Well, what is marketable? How would you define marketable?
I mean, marketable, it's a good question, but it does vary a little bit, but I would say just you do have to keep an eye on what's getting made. You have to keep an eye on that kind of thing, but also I remember, a year or 2 years ago, people were like, oh, they're only looking for Ted Lasso style comedies. And then Squid Games is the big hit. And then it's like, okay, now they're only looking for this. So I think I would say, I guess, keep in mind what's marketable, but also chasing trends can be like a fool's errand, I think, because that is the market moves on too fast to kind of do that, I think, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's true.
Are there any contests or deadlines or anything that you want to mention now, promote?
Sure. What's the time clock here? I need like a.
Oh, we have about 3 minutes and 15 seconds to go.
Oh God, the most stressful podcast.
Isn't it great?
I kind of love it though. It's such a good idea. Never be rich, because then you'll have to get the Zoom, like the regular version.
I will never. I pledge to never get Zoom Pro.
Do I have anything to pitch? Well, we have we just reopened the pitch contest season. We do that twice a year. We just picked the winner of this past season. She's fantastic. The runner-up is fantastic. Looking forward to really developing those two projects. The First Look project is open that Brett Bryan won. It's category specific, genre specific competition. And then the main screenwriting and TV writing competitions are open until May. Those are like the main one.
Those are good ones. Like I don't, Script Pipeline's not an official sponsor, but as somebody who's been through it and, did see my life, change because of it. Like, if you're going to go the contest route, I don't know better people in it. I don't know, a better way to go if that's your route. Do you want to, we have about 2 minutes. Where can people follow you? Anything else do you want to plug in this time?
My Twitter is SPMJM. Don't follow me though. You'll be sorely disappointed. I did just release the first of a 12-part article series today on our platform, Pipeline Artists.
I wanted to talk more about that, but man, we ran out of time fast.
Oh, that's okay. Don't read it. It's more, don't follow me, don't read it, don't do any of this. Go write a script and send it to us and make sure it's really good. No, I there's so many movies I haven't seen because I was always a TV person, and then I would just rewatch movies that I already liked, and so I never really, for the most part, compared to like a cinephile, really escaped that bubble. So I tasked myself with watching a movie a day this year, so 365 movies total.
Wow! And
then at the end of every month, I would just rank them in order of my preference, basically. And it's been illuminating. So I've wrapped January, and my number one film was Rain Man, shockingly.
Wow, actually, that's one I've missed. It came out when I was young, and I never went back for it. So that's one I should check out.
I was shocked at how much I liked it and how good it was.
Since with our last little bit of time, less than a minute to go, you've led into this. What are your top 5 movies all time?
Top 5 movies. I have no specific ranking. I'll throw some out at you.
Throw some out.
American Beauty.
Okay.
Of course, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Sure.
Any Indiana Jones movie, really. Field of Dreams. Sneakers. I just posted about Sneakers.
Sure. Great.
Excellent. Very underrated film. How much time we got?
It's just less than a minute. It's all we know. It'll cut us off at any time.
Oh God. Jesus. Minority Report.
Your meeting has ended. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to 39-Minute Conversations, hosted and produced by Brian T. Arnold. Music by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and tune in for new episodes, and don't forget to rate and review. If you didn't like what you heard, please don't do any of that. That's okay too. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe and be well.